All right, Rabosai, good morning. Let us begin. A beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Begin by thanking our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, Baruch Meir and Rena Dubin In, zechus for refuah shlema for their niece, Chava Tzipporah, Bas Chaya Malka. May she, together with Kol Cholei Yisroel, have a complete and enduring refuah. So with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Pei Vav 86. We're actually going to pick up on Pei Hey Amud Beis 85b. We left off, I apologize, I know we left off like right at the tail end. Al Amar Rav Ashi, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 lines up from the bottom. So just to quickly reorient ourselves, we're actually in the middle of a fascinating sugya. Now it's highlighting the distinction between a biblically prohibited marriage and a rabbinically prohibited marriage. And the idea that the Gemara was highlighting, or the Mishnah already highlighted, that if a man marries a woman who is an Isser Da'araisa, there is still a ksuva. Whereas if a man marries a woman who is an Isser D'Rabbanan, what the Gemara calls a sheni, there is no ksuva. So we're trying to understand exactly why that is, because it seems incredibly counterintuitive. Shabbos, essentially we had two answers. We had two answers to this. We had Rav Shimon Elazar and we had Rebbe. Rav Shimon Elazar essentially said that halacha l'maisa, the goal over here is to go ahead and encourage the dissolution of the marriage. So in a biblically prohibited marriage where there's going to be a change in status, a negative change in status, that negative change in and of itself is going to be the impetus for the dissolution of the marriage. But halacha l'maisa, again, in a rabbinically prohibited marriage, a sheni, there's no status change. So because there's no status change, therefore, again, there's no impetus to divorce. Therefore, the impetus for divorce has to be the lack of a ksuva. A woman's not going to want to stay in a marriage where ultimately there's no ksuva. Rebbe says, interestingly enough, it's a simple distinction. D'oraisa versus d'rabbanan. D'oraisa doesn't need chizuk. We're confident. This is actually interesting. We're confident that when people violate an issa d'oraisa, which happens, they're going to want to fix it. They don't want to fix it, and you don't really need to put any teeth on that in order to encourage them to fix it. Versus a d'Rabbanan, where again, people are people. We're generally more lax with rabbinic law than we are with biblical law, and therefore that requires a bit more teeth. Now I'll say that's the machlokes. Now the interesting part was this davar acher. This davar acher piece was this idea. The Gemara then added on something extra. The something extra was that essentially, in a situation where she encourages the marriage, she is the one who is penalized with the loss of a ksuva. In a situation where he would encourage the marriage, ultimately, again, the ksuva is intact. Essentially, leaving the ksuva intact is the penalty to him. So I will say, so then the Gemara, we drank the whole yesterday's daf again. So again, then the Gemara essentially goes ahead and tries to figure out who's saying the davar acher. Is the davar acher a statement of Rebbe? Is the davar acher ultimately a statement of Reb Shimon Elazar? And what's the nafkamina? What's practically between the davar acher and the other stated opinions? That's where we pick up. So the Gemara says, Ela Amar Rav Ashi, machzir safek so ika benayu. Rav Ashi could say the nafkamina between the opinions would be the case of a person who's remarrying his safek sota. Man damar daraisa, hanami daraisa. So the one who says that ultimately the distinction is between a daraisa and a d'Rabbanan, this is also an issa daraisa. Uman dar neshu margila, and the one who says that we look at who initiates the marriage, he margala lay. In this situation, she would go ahead and try to entice him to marry. Ul Rabbi Masya ben Charash Damar, afilu halach bailalash koso bala b'derach asa zona. But according to Masya ben Charash, who says that halacha l'maisa, in a sota situation, if the husband is on the way to go ahead and cause his wife to drink and to administer the waters, and he has relations with her, that act of relations makes her a zona. So now we have a status change. And then ha lo margala le velomidi. She would not encourage him to go ahead and engage in this kind of marriage. Ela amar mar Rav Ashi, sota vada ikabera. The nafkamina case would be the case of a sota vada, an actual sota, which isn't Isser Da'araisa, but yet halacha l'maisa, that would be a situation where she would be the one who would initiate trying to create the marriage. Good. Now we'll say, bottom line, how do we explain the distinction between a marriage that is an Isser Da'araisa versus a marriage that is an Isser D'Rabbanan. In that, an Isser Da'araisa has a ksuva and an Isser D'Rabbanan does not. How do we explain that distinction? Very simple. We adopt the position of Rebbe, namely that there is a fundamental difference between Da'araisa and D'Rabbanan. Divrei Torah, Einon Tzrichan Chizuk. Divrei, or D'Rabbanan, what was the lashon? Divrei Sofrim Tzrichim Chizuk. That Allah L'maisa, the rabbis felt the need to bolster rabbinic law, did not feel the need to bolster biblical law, and therefore halacha l'maisa, there is a ksuva in a situation of an Isser D'Araisa, no ksuva in a situation of an Isser D'Rabbanan. That's how we pass about halacha l'maisa, and that's reflecting this halacha. I will just say, while this is true, b'derech halacha, b'divrei hashkafa, how do we paskin? We paskin divrei Torah tzrichin chizuk, divrei sofrim tzrichin chizuk. That's what we paskin hashkafically. That a person, a yid needs hashkafa. A yid needs chizuk and everything. I need chizuk. I need to bolster myself in divrei Torah and daraisas, and I need to bolster myself in divrei sofrim in dirabbanans as well. Beautiful. We'll say Mishnah. Bas Yisrael me'ures es lekohen. So we'll say, and we're back to truma. Very interesting Mishnah. So Bas Yisrael me'ureses l'kohen. Bas Yisrael me'ureses l'kohen. If you have a Bas Yisrael who had erisin, right? So again, not nisuin, but erisin to a kohen, or me'uberes mikohen, or she's pregnant from a kohen, or shomeres yavam l'kohen, or her husband died and she's waiting for yibum to a kohen, ubas kohen li Yisrael, or a bas kohen who marries Yisrael. Rabbi say in all of these cases, lo solcha b'truma. She's not allowed to eat truma. Because Rabbi say, remember again, the only way a woman is permitted to go ahead and eat truma is how? Is halacha l'maisa if she's married to a kohen. Full-fledged marriage. Erisin is not enough. Carrying the kohen's child is not enough. Now, again, let me take that back. There are two ways in which she's entitled to eat truma. What are the two ways? Either number one, she's married to a kohen, or B, she has a kohen's child. Even if the child is out of wedlock, halacha l'maisa, again, that would enable her to go ahead and eat truma. If you don't satisfy one of those two criteria, can't eat truma. Now, Bosai, that last case, Bas Kohen Li, so I was talking about a girl who grew up in a Kohanic home, right? She's a Bas Kohen, therefore she's in her father's home, what? She could eat truma. Now, again, obviously, once she marries Yisroel, she is no longer able to go ahead and eat truma. Good. Bas Yisrael me'ureses leLevi. If you have a Bas Yisrael who has erisin with a Levi, or me'uberes mi-Levi, or she's pregnant from a Levi, or shomeres yavam leLevi, or she's waiting for yibum to a Levi, v'chein Bas Levi li-Yisrael, or if a Bas Levi marries Yisrael, lo solcha b'maisa. So both say now we've just entered into the topic of Meiser Rishon. Levi gets, right, Kohen gets Truma, Levi gets Meiser Rishon. I will say, of course, you know that the Levi from his portion has to separate something as well, right? The Levi from his Meiser Rishon has to separate out Trumas Meiser. But again, we're not getting into Trumas Meiser right now. So I will say now by Levi, same idea. Halacha l'maisa, if a woman wants to eat Meiser Rishon, halacha l'maisa, she's got to be married to a Levi or have a baby from a Levi. Now, interestingly enough, and then the Mishnah also says that same case, which is Bas Levi me'ureses l'kohen me'uber. Uchein Bas Levi l'Yisrael. And once a Bas Levi marries Yisrael, she also loses the ability to eat Meiser Rishon. Okay, Bas Levi me'ureses l'kohen. Listen to this case. What if a Bas Levi has erisin, right? She has erisin with a kohen. Or me'uberes mi-kohen, she's pregnant from a kohen. Shomeres yavam l'kohen, she's waiting for yibum from a kohen. Or bas kohen l'levi, or for that matter, a bas kohen marries a levi. In all of these cases, it's very interesting. In all of these cases, lo socha lo b'truma, but lo b'meiser. Those last cases are fascinating, no? Because in those last cases, she can't eat meiser rishon because she has, so to speak, left the Levitic home, but she also can't yet eat truma. Why can't she eat truma? Because halacha l'maisa, remember, as we said, truma consumption is based on either being married to a kohen or having a baby from a kohen. Incredible. So both say those are all the cases. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Utehei zara. So the Gemara says, let's go back to this case for just a moment. So the Gemara says over here that we'll say, interestingly enough, we've kind of already spoken, we've spoken a lot about Truma already. So now the Gemara is actually going to pick up with a discussion regarding Meiser Rishon. So remember again, when we get into the Meiser Rishon, we got into the Bas Yisrael Me'ureses LeLevi Me'uberes MiLevi. So Bas Yisrael is Erisin with a Levi, pregnant from a Levi, Shomeres Yavam for a Levi, or a Bas Levi who married Yisrael can't eat Meiser Rishon. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Utei Zara, why should she be any worse than just a non-Levi? Zara Mila Achla B'Meiser. They both say, get ready for this. A non-Levi is permitted to eat Meiser Rishon. In other words, Rabbi say, we'll see why this is in just a moment. As much as we kind of often speak about Truma to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon to the Levi, they are not on equal footing. Whereas Truma, Rabbi say, right, intentional consumption of Truma by a non-Kohen carries with it kares. Unintentional ultimately is payment of principal plus a fifth. Meiser Rishon technically is permitted to non-Leviim. So I don't understand why do you have all of these cases of this woman who's not permitted to eat Meiser Rishon? Anyone could eat Meiser Rishon. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel Hamani Rabbi Meir. They both say this is a machlokes. So I will say, remember, what we're specifically talking about over here is the second part of the Mishnah. A Bas Yisrael has Erisin to a Levi, right? Or a Bas Yisrael is pregnant from a Levi. Or a woman is waiting for Yibum from a Levi. Or a Bas Levi marries Yisrael. The Mishnah says she can't eat Meiser Rishon. Why can't she eat Meiser Rishon? Anyone is allowed to eat Meiser Rishon. To which the Gemara says it's a machlokes. The Amar Meiser Rishon Asr Lazarim. Rabbi Meir is of the opinion. Rabbi Meir holds that halacha l'maisa Meiser Rishon cannot be consumed by non-Kohanim. This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Desanya, top of Pevav, Truma l'Kohen, u'Meiser Rishon l'Levi div Rabbi Meir. So we'll say, listen to this. There's a machlokes. So Rabbi Meir holds that just like Truma is given to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon is given to the Levi. And halacha l'maisa, no one else is permitted to consume these items. Take a look at the top Rashi and Pevav. Nisinasa l'Kohen, Truma l'Kohen, Nisinasa l'Kohen. U'Meiser Rishon l'Levi katani, Meiser l'Levi dumya the Truma the Kohen. So it's in Rabbi Meir's model, the giving of Meiser Rishon to the Levi is the same thing as the giving of the Truma to the Kohen. Ma Truma achilasa kinesinas l'Kohen v'lo l'zar. Af, I'm reading Rashi, Af Meiser l'Levi achilaso l'Levi v'lo l'zar. We'll say this is the position of Rabbi Meir. Just like Truma goes to the Kohen and not to anyone else, so too Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi and not to anyone else. So good. So we'll say, so let's go back to the Gemara. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah matiro the Kohen. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, no, you could even give Meiser Rishon to a Kohen. Now we'll discuss why he uses that formulation. Matiro michlal di'ika man da'aser. So when he says that he permits, when it says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that you're permitted to go ahead and give Meiser Rishon to a Kohen, that makes it sound like there's someone who holds that you can't give Meiser Rishon to a Kohen. Ela no snow af l'Kohen. No. What Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, you can even give Meiser Rishon to a Kohen. Okay, so we'll say, let's pause here for just a moment. This is one of these very exciting Gemaras where we're learning something that is such like a yesodistic fundamental idea. Again, with Truma, everyone's in agreement. Also, there's a good reason why by Truma everyone's in agreement. Why? Because it's a pasuk in the Torah. That's good. It's always helpful. So, right, Truma goes to the Kohen, Kol Azar, anyone who's not a Kohen who eats it, penalty of death, of kares, and again, unintentional consumption, payment of principal plus a fifth. That's explicit. What about Meiser Rishon? So we have machlokes. Rabbi Meir, Meiser Rishon is for the Levi and for the Levi only. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you can even give Meiser Rishon to the Kohen. Okay, let's analyze. Here we go. My time with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir, what's your logic? Why do you hold that Meiser Rishon could only go to the Levi? Ki es maaser b'nei Yisrael sheyarimu la'Hashem truma. Chava said the pasuk the Gemara is quoting over here, Bamidbar Yud Ches Chav Daled, Kies Maasar Bnei Yisrael She'erimu LaHashem Truma Nasati LeLevim. So we'll say the pasuk here is talking about Meiser Rishon. That's the topic. The way the Torah phrases it is the Maasar Bnei Yisrael She'erimu, the Meiser Rishon that Bnei Yisrael will separate LaHashem Truma Nasati LeLevim. I have given to the Leviim. So Rabbi says like this. Rabbi say it is interesting that how does the Torah refer to Meiser Rishon as Truma? Watch this. Ma Truma asur lezarim, af Meiser Rishon asur lezarim. Just like Truma is prohibited to non-Kohanim, so too again Meiser Rishon is prohibited to non-Kohanim. Okay, that's the distinction. So Rabbi say Ima Truma chayavin alav misa. So Rabbi say, so therefore again, that's Rabbi Meir's whole svara, that the pasuk by Meiser Rishon calls Meiser Rishon Truma. Just like Truma is only for Kohanim, forbidden for non-Kohanim, so to halacha l'maisa, Meiser Rishon is only for Leviim. Incredible. Well, that's the case, Rabbi Meir. If you're going to really make a comparison between Meiser Rishon and Truma, why don't you say Ima Truma chayavin alav misa v'chomesh, af Meiser chayavin alav misa v'chomesh? Okay, so let's take the comparison all the way. Just like Truma, intentional consumption of Truma by non-Kohen carries with it a death penalty, and unintentional consumption carries with it payment of principal plus a penalty. Fifth, say the same thing by Meiser Rishon. Amar Kra, here we go. By Truma, the pasuk says Umesu bo ki chalaluhu. The pasuk says they will die for they have profaned it. So a reference to those who consume Truma. The asaf chamishiso alav. The pasuk by the penalty fifth, you will add on a fifth to it. Bo, we'll say, well, what do we darshan? By the death penalty, by Truma, what does it say? Umesu bo. What does bo mean? What does bo mean? It. So the death penalty only applies to Truma. Bo v'lo b'meiser. Bo means the death penalty only applies to Truma, not to Meiser Rishon. Alav, the penalty fifth, only applies to it. It refers to alav v'lo al Meiser. It and not to Meiser Rishon. So ultimately, again, so here's Rabbi Meir's entire shita, right? So Rabbi Meir understands the fact that the Torah calls Meiser Rishon Truma, tells you that just like Truma is for the Kohanim, Meiser Rishon is for the Leviim. That's step one. If that's the case, then why doesn't illegal consumption of Truma, of Meiser Rishon, carry the same penalty as illegal consumption of Truma? Because you have limiting phrases by Truma. Bo, alav, the restrictions of Truma only apply to Truma, don't apply to Meiser Rishon. Beautiful. The Rabbanon will say, Ma Truma toveles. Rabbi say, what do the Rabbanon do with this drasha? They'll say like this, Ma Truma toveles, af Meiser Rishon nami tovel. So Rabbi say, the Rabbanon understand the comparison, because Rabbi say, at the end of the day, you do have to acknowledge that the Torah does refer to Meiser Rishon as Truma. So what do the Rabbanon do with this comparison? They'll say like this, just like failure to separate out Truma makes the grain tevel, which also means untithed produce, so too failure to separate out Meiser Rishon also makes the produce tevel. Af Meiser Rishon nami tovel. Ukidisanya. And I both say again, the Brisa, we have a Brisa that's the Parsis, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Yochol lo yehe chayiv ela al tevel shelo hura mimeno kol ikar. So I would say, you might have thought that halacha l'maisa, it's only called tevel, there's only tevel liability if you removed none of the tithes from the grain. Hura mimeno truma gidola, v'lo hura mimeno meiser rishon. So I would say, how do I know that even if I separated out truma gidola, which is truma, but didn't separate out meiser rishon, or meiser rishon v'lo meiser sheni, or I separate out meiser rishon, but didn't separate out Meiser Sheni, Vafilu Meiser Ani, or maybe I separated out all of the tithes, but I didn't separate out Meiser Ani. Minayin, how do I know that the grain is still considered to be Tevel? Talmud Lomar, Lo Suchal Le'echol B'Sha'arecha. The pasuk says, you cannot consume it in your gates. Cannot consume it in your gates. Ulahalanu Omer Rabosai, and later on it says, Va'achlu b'sha'arecha v'saveyu. You shall eat it in your gates, and you shall be satiated. So the Gemara says, Ma sha'arecha Omer lahalan meiser ani. Just like the sha'arecha referred to over here is the meiser ani, af sha'arecha Omer kan meiser ani. So it's Rabbi said the sha'arecha said in the first pasuk also refers to meiser ani. Va'amar rachmana lo suchal. And Rabbi said the Torah says you shall not consume. So Rabbi said this is actually very interesting. So from here you see that halacha l'maisa, failure to remove any type of tithe renders the grain or the produce tevel. So Rabbi say it's an interesting havamina. I would have thought that maybe it's only failure to remove like the severe tithes. And Rabbi say, what's really the severe tithe is what? Is truma, right? Because that's really the only tithe where failure, where illegal consumption could result in death. If done intentionally, illegal consumption again has the principle plus a penalty fifth. So the havamina was, it would only be failure to remove truma that would render the produce tevel. Kamash malan, the Gemara teaches a very important halach. Kamash malan, failure to remove any tithe, by definition goes ahead and renders the mixture tevel. So the Gemara says, and if we were to learn that from their havamina, lelav. I would have thought ultimately again it's only a lav. Avamisa lo, but perhaps there's no death penalty. Therefore, again, kamash mala, not like that. Kamash mala rabosai, that there is this comparison between truma and meiser. All right, lishnach rina, another version of this, meiser rishon, the tavil, mid Rabbi Yossi nafka. Rabosai, the idea that halacha l'maisa, that failure to remove meiser rishon creates a tevel situation, is learned out from Rabbi Yossi. But he me'ahi hava amina lalav. If that was so, I would have thought there would only be for a lav, ava misalo, but I wouldn't think that there would be a death penalty associated with that. Kamash malon, not like that. Good. So we'll say, so far what we have coming out of this sugya is, remember, we'll say, what are we bothered by? What are we bothered by? We're bothered by a very simple question, which is, the Mishnah in its second part set up this construct where if a Bas Levi, right, a Bas Yisroel is Mureses to a Levi, Erusim with a Levi, pregnant from a Levi, Shomeres Yavam for a Levi, or a Bas Levi who marries Yisroel, can't eat Meiser Rishon. The Gemara is bothered by that. Why? Anyone could eat Meiser Rishon, which I will say opens our eyes to a brand new world of Machlokes, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. There is a machlokes about who is permitted to eat Meiser Rishon. And Rabbi Meir holds the comparison between Truma and Meiser Rishon. Pasuk calls Meiser Rishon Truma. Just like only a Kohen could eat Truma, so too only a Levi could eat Meiser Rishon. So I will say, bottom line is, our Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Meir, that Meiser Rishon could only be consumed by a Levi. However, it's important for our purposes, to also understand, there's Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says anyone could eat Meiser Rishon. What we just did in this last section over here is went through where they learn out their respective shitos from, their respective opinions from, and also how each one uses the pasuk of the other. Beautiful. Let's analyze. But Ma'ukimta, so we'll say, here we go. So Ma'ukimta. So we'll say now, how have we set up the Mishnah? Right? How have we set up the Mishnah? So now again, we'll say, so our Mishnah teaches us that if a Bas Yisrael has Erisin with a Levi, she cannot eat Meiser Rishon. Okay, so now whose opinion is reflected? Who does our Mishnah reflect? Ma'ukimta, Rabbi Meir. Meir, who holds that Meiser Rishon can only be consumed by a Levi. Okay, so Amos Seifa, but let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Bas Levi me'ureses lekohen, ubas kohen lelevi, lo socha, lo betruma, v'lo b'meiser. So we'll say, okay, now we come to a problem. Let's look at the end of the Mishnah. What was the end of the Mishnah? A Bas Levi has Erusin with a Kohen, or a Bas Kohen has Erusin with a Levi. So we'll say, in this case, these women can't eat anything, right? Not literally anything. In other words, they can't eat Meiser Rishon, right? Because there's no baby or marriage from a Levi, and they can't eat Truma because there's not yet marriage or baby with a Kohen. So the Gemara says, Hacha Maizoros Ika. They will say, I don't understand. See, in the case of a Bas Levi who's Me'ureses to a Kohen, or a Bas Kohen who's Me'ureses to a Levi, I will say, in both of these cases, this woman is linked in a strong fashion to Shevet Levi. So, right, because either way, she's either in the Kohanic family or Levi, she's in Shevet Levi. So why can't she eat Meiser Rishon in this case? To which the Gemara Amar of Sheshes, "My eino ocheles diktani, eino nosenes rishos litro." Interesting. No, what does it mean when it says she doesn't eat? What it means is she can't authorize her agent to tithe the produce. I will say, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. The Rashi is right across from Tosfos Af Meiser Rishon. So Rashi says over Eino Nosenes Rishos Lishlucha Litrom Meiser Shal Aros Ulaharim Mimenu Trumas Meiser Vahavile Kitarim Shalom Idas. So Rabbi says interesting. So let's say in the case of ultimately again a Bas Levi who's Me'ureses to a Kohen. So Rabbi say what we're suggesting now is that she could eat Meiser Rishon. Why Rabbi say? Because either way, she is already inextricably linked with Shevet Levi, right? Because she's a Bas Levi, she has Eris into a Kohen. So what can she do? She can't instruct her agent to go ahead and separate out Trumas Meiser from her Arus's, from her Erisin husband's, from her Kohen husband's produce. Okay, so the Gemara says, Michlal de Nesua Nosenes Rishus. So I will say, does that mean that a woman during Nisuin has the right to instruct an agent to go ahead and separate out, tithe her husband's produce? Vatanya, we learned, Vachaltem also b'chol makom. I will say the pasuk says, you shall go ahead and eat this in any area, right? The Gemara says, Vachaltem b'chol makom, atem Vachaltem also b'chol makom, atem ubeischem. So Rabbi say, what does this teach me? Limed al Nesua Bas Yisrael Shenosenes Rishos Litrom. Rabbi say, this teaches me about a Nesua Bas Yisrael, that Rabbi say, this is a case ultimately again of a Bas Yisrael married to a Levi, that she has the ability to go ahead and give Rishos to a Shaliach to go ahead and tithe Trumas Meiser. At Omer Rishos Litrom, O Eino Ena Lechel. You're telling me that's true, that she has the ability to authorize the shaliach to go ahead and separate out tithes, or maybe it's only to consume. Amrit truma chamura ocheles meiser akala kol shekain. So I will say, if she has the ability to eat truma chamura, of course she has the ability to go ahead and eat meiser. So ela limed al nesua bas Yisrael shenosenes rishos litrom. Rather, I will say what it does teach us is that halach lamaisa, a woman who is fully married does have the ability to authorize an agent to separate out tithes from her husband's produce. And therefore, the novelty in the Mishnah is that the ability for a wife to authorize a shaliach to tithe produce is only when? During Nisuin, and not during Erisin. Okay? Ooh, we'll say this is fascinating. Rabbi say there's another halacha over here. The Seifa of the Mishnah is coming to teach me a different halacha, which is Rabbi say the following case. Listen to this. You have a Bas Levi who is Me'ureses to the Kohen. Right? The Bas Levi who's Me'ureses to a Kohen. So Rabbi say, now watch this. Now, halacha l'maisa. So the Mishnah says that such a woman can't eat Meiser Sheni and can't eat Truma. So the Truma part I understand. Why can't she eat Meiser Sheni? To which the Gemara says, it doesn't mean she can't eat Meiser Sheni. Do you know what it means? Listen to this. So I said, Levia Me'ureses l'Kohen. So listen to this. So the Gemara says, this teaches She'in Cholkin L'Meiser Beis Agronos. What it's come to teaching us is, if she shows up at the threshing floor, we will not give her tithes. We will not give her Meiser Sheni at the threshing floor. Right? So I will say, so again, that should be very clear. This is the Seifa of the Mishnah, either talking about the case of Levia Me'ureses l'Kohen Bas Levi with Eris into a Kohen, or Bas Kohen Me'ureses to a Levi. When it says that she can't eat Meiser Rishon, what that means is what? If she shows up at the threshing floor, we will not give her Meiser Rishon. It doesn't mean she can't eat it. In the house, she could eat it. But if she shows up to a threshing floor to try to claim it, we will not give it to her. Why not? Rabbi say, what's going on? This is fascinating. Rabbi say, there is a general opinion that we don't want women showing up at the threshing floor to collect tithes. Why? There could be a yichud problem. Rabbi say, yichud is the halacha that says that a man is not permitted to be alone with another woman. Can't be secluded. So who's not his wife or is not his daughter, right? So halacha l'maisa, in general, we don't want Jewish women going to a threshing floor because you could have a situation of yichud. So in general, so therefore, I will say the way we kind of give teeth to that legislation is saying how we don't dispense tithes to women on the threshing floor. It avoids yichud. Elamandar mishum grusha. Rabbi say, according to the opinion, it says grusha. Rabbi say, the other opinion says no. Do you know why we don't dispense tithes to women on the threshing floor? Because Rabbi say, watch this. What's the concern? Maybe a woman was married, and as a married woman, she's entitled to tithes. Now she gets divorced. As a divorcee, is she entitled to continue to collect truma or meiser? It depends, right? It depends on the situation. But Allah Meiser, we're concerned that if she becomes accustomed to coming to a threshing floor, and on the threshing floor, they become accustomed to giving her the tithes, then what's going to happen? She's going to continue to illegally collect, even when? After divorce. So the Gemara says, Elamandar mishum grusha bas levi milo achla b'meiser. They both say, but if we're talking about a case of meiser rishon, and you have a bas levi who's mi'ureses to a kohen, guess what? Even if she's divorced, she's still entitled to what? She's still entitled to eat meiser rishon. So what'll be the problem? Ulodamech grusha bas kohen milo achla b'truma el gzera mishum grusha bas Yisroel. No, Bosai. What's the concern? The concern isn't about a grusha bas kohen or a grusha bas levi. What's the concern about? A grusha bas Yisroel. See, Bosai, if you have a bas Yisroel who marries a kohen or a bas Yisroel who marries a levi, so when she gets married, suddenly again she's married a kohen, she's entitled to eat what? Truma. She marries levi, she's entitled to eat meiser rishon. If we get used to giving her tithes on the threshing floor and then she gets divorced, so Bosai, maybe she doesn't know or we don't know about her divorce, and what happens? She continues to show up and collect. That's problematic. But if that's the case, then why are you setting this up as a case of erusin? It's also same issue is concerned. Same concern exists by nisuin. To which the Gemara says, you're right. So the ID, the Tana Rish Me'ureses, Tana Nami Seifa Me'ureses. Well, say Inachi Nami, the Gemara says, you're absolutely correct. All the Mishnah was going for is Mishnaic symmetry. Since we started out as Me'ureses, we go ahead and we finish up as Me'ureses. Beautiful. Tan Rabban on the Gemara said we learned Truma Lakoinu Meiser Rishon Levi. So we'll say now we're going back. So we'll say now we've gone through the Mishnah. And we'll say let's dig in now, because what's really fascinating about this is, we're conditioned to think Truma is the portion, not condition. Truma is the portion of the Kohen, and ultimately Meiser Rishon is the portion of the Levi. And I will say it would make sense to say that just as Truma is the singular property of the Kohen, so too Meiser Rishon is the. Remember again, I will say the common denominator between the Kohen and the Leviim is what? What's the common denominator? Both part of Shevet Levi, and therefore both what? Don't have land. They don't own land. They don't have a tribal portion. These gifts are designed to aid in the support of Shevet Levi. So I will say, what guarantees the support of a Kohen? The fact that no one else is permitted to eat his truma. So I will say, it's fascinating to see this discussion that the Leviim don't seem to enjoy this same level of dedicated entitlement. So I will say, so let's analyze this a little bit. So Tan Rabbanon, here we go. Truma l'koinu meiser rishon l'levi div Rabbi Akiva. So I will say Rabbi Akiva is the same opinion like Rabbi Meir, namely that halacha l'maisa, just like Truma goes to the Kohen, meiser rishon goes to the Levi. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says as follows. Rabbi listen to this. He says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, I will say fascinating. Listen to this. Omer Amud Beis, Omer l'kohen. Meiser Rishon goes to the Kohen. What's going on over here? So again, just say you shouldn't have making this up. Last time in the Gemara, right? Rabbi Akiva says Truma goes to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says no, we'll give Truma to the Kohen and Meiser Rishon to the Kohen. The Kohen velo the Levi says what? You're going to give Meiser Rishon to the Kohen and not to the Levi? So Rabbi said no. Ema af le Kohen. Rather say what does it mean? Meiser Rishon can also be given to the Kohen. In other words, we're not saying it doesn't go to the Levi, but it can also be given to the Kohen. So Rabbi say, okay, let's analyze this. My time of the Rabbi Akiva. Let's start with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's model, Truma to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon to the Levi. Okay? Let's start with that. Okay, fine. Let's start with that. So Truma to the Kohen, Meiser Rishon to the Levi. So I will say, my time, it's beautiful. Right? So my time with Rabbi Akiva. So we'll say, right, what's the logic of Rabbi Akiva? D'chsiv v'el haLeviyim tedaber v'amarta aleim. So we'll say, here we go. So the pasuk over here, the Gemara is quoting, as Bamidbar Yudches Tchavvav. VaLeviyim tedaber v'amarta aleim ki sikhu me'es b'nei Yisroel es hamaiser asher asati lachem mi'itam b'nachal aschem v'haimos imenu truma Hashem asem en amarser. Now both say, the pasuk over here the Gemara is referencing is actually the pasuk of Trumas Meiser, which says that when the Levi gets his Meiser Rishon, he is obligated to separate out a piece of that Meiser for the Kohen. That's called Trumas Meiser. So there will say, the way the Torah phrase, Ve'al haLeviyim tedaber ve'amartem aleihem. So Rabbi Akiva will say, Be'leviyim kamishtoikra. Right? Ultimately, again, we'll say, when the Torah speaks about Meiser, who is it talking to? The Leviim, which indicates to us what? Who does Meiser Rishon belong to? Leviim. So the Gemara says, V'idach kid Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. And I will say, listen to this. The other piece will go according to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. What does Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi say? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Be'esim v'arba makomos nikru kohanim Leviim. So we'll say, listen to this. In 20, so we'll say, what now? Okay, so before we go on, so we'll say, so therefore Rabbi Akiva's shita is like this. It's very simple. The Torah, when it speaks about, again, separating out Meiser Rishon or getting Meiser Rishon, it's a pasuk explicitly addressed to the Leviim. So therefore, the Leviim get Meiser Rishon. So we'll say, what does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, what does he do with this pasuk? What does he do with the pasuk? So I'll say, now watch this. V'idach Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will say, well, one second. Let's not ignore the position of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. What does Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi say? Here we go. Then Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Ve'esim v'arba makomos nikru kohanim Leviim. So we'll say, interestingly enough, in 24 places, kohanim are called Leviim. V'zeh echad mehem. And this is one of them. V'hakohanim haLeviim b'nei tzadok. So we'll say, listen to this. The pasuk says, "The Kohanim, the Leviim, b'nei tzadok." Now Rashi points out that b'nei tzadok, tzadok kohen haya, the karo lebanav haLeviim. So I'll say, interestingly enough, tzadok was a kohen, but it called his sons Leviim. Now I'll say, it's actually not a contradiction. Why is it not a contradiction to call Kohanim Leviim? Why? All from Shevet Levi. They're all Levitic, right? Kohanim are Levitic as well. So the Gemara Rabbi Akiva, Hacha lo matzis amrit. Rabbi Akiva will say, here you can't really go ahead and claim. That's why D'chsiv va'achaltem oso b'chol makom. The Torah says, you shall eat it in any place. Mishi yachal la'ochlo b'chol makom. That refers to someone or something that could be eaten in any place. Yatza kohen she'in yachal la'ochlo beis hakvaros. Rabbi will say, this comes to exclude a kohen, ultimately, again, who can't eat in any place. Rabbi say, so again, here's what's happening over here. You've got on one hand Rabbi Akiva saying that halacha l'maisa, the pasuk when it speaks out Meiser Rishon is specifically addressed to the Leviim. Okay, therefore telling me Meiser Rishon only belongs to Leviim. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I don't know, because often Kohanim are also called Leviim. So therefore I will say, whenever you see Levi mentioned in the Torah, so I will say, Rabbi Akiva's whole model is, if the Torah says Levi is to the exclusion of what? Exclusion of what? Kohen. To which Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, no, there are 24 places where ultimately Kohanim are called Leviim, which means that even when you see the Torah say Levi means Levi. Of course it means Levi, but it doesn't have to exclude Kohen. And therefore, even over here by Meiser Rishon, even the Torah is specifically saying that Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi, that doesn't have to exclude a Kohen. To which Rabbi Akiva responds and he says, no, because Rabbi say the Torah says when it comes to Meiser Rishon, it says, V'achaltem oso b'chol makom. You shall eat it in any place. Now Rabbi say, now watch this. Says Rabbi Akiva, who does that refer to? Mi sheyachal la'ochlo b'chol makom. This refers to someone who could eat Ma'aser Rishon in any place. However, Yotza Kohen shen yachal la'ochlo beis hakvaros. This comes to exclude a Kohen who can't eat this item, who can't eat Ma'aser Rishon in any place. We'll say, because why? A Kohen can't eat where? Can a Kohen eat b'chol makom? No, right? Where can't he eat? Where can't he eat? Cemetery. Let's that sound strange. I'll tell you, I remember when we moved to Baltimore, the most interesting thing I found is the cemetery right here. What is it, on Park Heights, Druid Hill? Right, where people go for Sunday trips to a cemetery. Granted, again, it's the duck pond right next to the cemetery. But Lamaisa, lest you think it's so crazy that people picnic in a cemetery, down the block, right? Down the block. Right, not in the cemetery proper, but right next to it. So I will say, so Rabbi Akiva says like this, it's fascinating. So Rabbi Akiva says, when speaking about Ma'aser Rishon, the Torah says you shall eat it in any place, meaning only people who could consume things in any place are entitled to this. Who's a person who could consume items in any place? A Levi. Who's a person who can't consume items in any place? A Kohen. And therefore, by definition, you see that Ma'aser Rishon is limited to a Levi, not to a Kohen. V'idach. What will Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah say to this? V'idach. Kol heicha debai. Kol heicha debai. Kol heicha debai. Delo bai choma. So we'll say ultimately again, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will say that halacha l'maisa, it means kol heicha debai, meaning referring to the fact that you could eat items anywhere in any geographic location, i.e., it doesn't have to be consumed within the walls of Yerushalayim. Fine. So the Gemara tells a story. So we'll say, so this is our fundamental machlokes. Our fundamental machlokes, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, namely halacha l'maisa. Once again, we'll say, by the way, it's pretty much the same machlokes as Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, right? Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir are saying the same position. I will say, just so you know, Rabbi Meir was Rabbi Akiva's TALMUD. Was Rabbi Akiva's TALMUD, right? Rabbi Meir was one of his Talmidim. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir is one of his Talmidim. So the Gemara says, Well, so listen to this story. So here we go. Rabbi Akiva, Ma'aser Rishon only for Leviim. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, remember again, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's position was, even Kohanim are entitled to Ma'aser Rishon. Okay? Now watch, here we go. Listen to this story. Hahi ginsa, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Ma'aser Rishon minei. Rabbi say, get ready for this story. There was a particular garden. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who was a Kohen, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah himself was a Kohen, he used to go, Rashi points out over here, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, second line on the top, Kohen haya, kidam bebrachos, siri le'ezra. Both say incredible. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a 10th generation descendant of Ezra, and he was a Kohen. Now watch this. So there was a garden. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah used to go into the garden and take the Ma'aser Rishon for himself. He's a Kohen. Get ready. Azal Rabbi Akiva, ahadre lepischa lebekivri. What did Rabbi Akiva do? He didn't want Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah taking from the Ma'aser Rishon. He reoriented the entranceway of the garden so that the only way you could access it was going through a cemetery. No greater way to block entry to a Kohen than to go and change the entrance through a cemetery. Amar, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah got upset. He said, Akiva betarmilo va'ana chaye. Akiva is walking around with his pouch, but I'll be just fine. Now, what does that mean? Look at Rashi. Akiva betarmilo, bishum Rabbi Akiva rayed the kalba savu hava. Rabbi said this was an insult to Rabbi Akiva. It was an insult to Rabbi Akiva. That Rabbi Akiva ultimately, when it says his pouch, this was a reference. Shepherds used to go out and walk around with a pouch. Rabbi Akiva was the ignorant shepherd of Kalba Savua, who became his future father-in-law. So ultimately, again, what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will say, fighting words. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, shepherd, do whatever you want. I'll be just fine. Right? So he was calling Rabbi Akiva shepherd, which I will say so strange and so intense, referencing the fact that Rabbi Akiva began his life as an ignorant shepherd, but that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was also very wealthy. So he's like, Chaya, I'll be just fine. But you're the shepherd. So we'll say, what's going on over here? What is going on? So we'll say, I'll share with you. There's an incredible statement to the Maharsha So the Maharsha comments on this, and he says, the Maharsha says, listen to this. He says, Rabbi Akiva, he says, Milosho zemashna delo yod Rabbi Akiva das Rabbi ben Azariah. So I will say, so Rabbi Akiva wasn't clear exactly why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was doing what he did. We're going to see, Rabbi say, that there is an ensuing discussion about even if you hold that halacha lemaisa, Kohanim are entitled to Meiser Rishon. Why are they entitled to Meiser Rishon? We're going to get into this in just a little bit. But Rabbi Akiva wasn't sure why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was going ahead and taking Meiser Rishon. What he did know was what? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah what? Didn't need the Meiser Rishon. Didn't need the Meiser Rishon. So therefore he went ahead and he felt that he was within the right to prevent Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah by taking it, by changing the entranceway through a cemetery. So Rabbi say, we'll see this in just a moment. See in just a moment why. Rabbi say, so why does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah have such a strong reaction? Rabbi say, by the way, it's an incredible Musar Haskell. If you have a problem with someone or something they're doing, talk it out. Don't take unilateral action. Because the moment you take unilateral action without dialogue and a moment, therefore, that a person feels that they're not heard, is the moment that leaves a person very offended. Or was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in the right to make such a statement about Rabbi Akiva? I don't know. I'm not. Who are we to stand in judgment of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? It doesn't seem like it's the right thing to do to reference someone's past as an ignorant shepherd. Doesn't seem like it's the right thing to do. But Rabbi say, often when people are hurt, they don't necessarily do the right thing. They don't say the right thing, they don't do the right thing. I will say, what's missing from this exchange is exactly that, an exchange. Right? Rabbi Akiva just unilaterally changes the entranceway of the garden. Never speaks to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, never discusses Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It's a machlokes. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, just curious, you're fabulously wealthy. Why are you taking the Meiser Rishon from the garden? Just want to understand why this is going on. That's the piece that's missing. That's the piece that's missing. And it's the fact that Rabbi Akiva takes action, essentially condemning Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's actions without ever engaging him in any level of dialogue that leads Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to be profoundly hurt. And Rabbi say sometimes people say things that they don't mean, or even if they mean, things that they should not say when they are hurt. Rabbi say such an incredible Musar Haskell. If you have a problem with something that someone is doing, engage in dialogue. Because if you take unilateral action more often than not, it just makes matters worse. So I will say, what is happening over here? So here we go. Fasting sugi. Itmar. Mipnei ma konsulavim b'maiser. So we'll say, now, the Gemara is presupposing that halacha l'maisa, Kohanim can consume Meiser Rishon. Kohanim can consume. So the Gemara says, why? Why was Meiser Rishon taken away from the Levium? So get ready for this. Levium, get ready for this. So Pligi bar Rabbi Yochanan v'Sabya. So Rabbi Yochanan and another old man, v'Sabya, another old sage, argued. Chad Amar Shalo Alibime Ezra. Wow. I will say, we know that when Ezra comes back to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash, only a fraction of the Jewish people ascended with him, but there was one group that was absolutely missing. Who was missing? Levium. It's fascinating. As a group, the Levium were absent. Shelo alu b'mei Ezra. And I will say, because they did not come up with Ezra penalized them. And what was the penalization? What was the punishment? Ultimately, takes away their Meiser Rishon. Now, not takes it away, but allows others to benefit from it as well. Others here will say, no. That the right for Kohanim to go ahead and eat Meiser Rishon was supposed to say as follows. A Kohen has Truma, but Truma is only good if you're Tahor. If you're Tameh, you can't eat Truma. So Chazal gave Kohanim the right to eat Meiser Rishon as well, so they have something to subsist on, even when they are Tameh. So I understand, if you tell me that ultimately, again, they didn't come up with Ezra, it's a knas, it's a penalty. We're going to take away their Meiser Rishon. Now, when we say take it away, it doesn't mean that Levium can't eat it. It just means that suddenly it is consumable by others as well. Shabbos say, but if you say that this is about the Kohanim having something to eat when they are tamei, I don't understand. So to benefit the Kohanim will penalize the Leviim? That doesn't seem fair. Ella kule alma knosa shelo alu b'mei Ezra. Shabbos say, fascinating. Everyone agrees that there was a penalty levied upon the Leviim because they did not ascend with Ezra. Shabbos say the Leviim as a group did not ascend with Ezra, and therefore they were penalized. I will say, what was the penalty? That other people besides Leviim are going to get to eat Ma'aser Rishon. So what's the machlokes? Here we go. Here's the machlokes. Mar savar knasa leViim. One says, I will say that ultimately again, the knas means that, or how does the knas materialize? Who's permitted to eat Ma'aser Rishon? Aniyim. That Ma'aser Rishon was given to the poor as well, namely so that poor people could take Ma'aser Rishon. Umar Savar, no, the Knas is Kohanim b'mei tumasan. Oh, I'm sorry. Umar Savar, Kohanim b'mei tumasan aniyim ninhu, or others say, Kohanim during the days that they are poor, during the days that they're tamei, are also considered to be aniyim. Right? Why are they aniyim? Because they don't have access to truma. So this is fascinating. So say just an important historical piece of information. Everyone is agreeing. There's there's two stages to Ma'aser Rishon. There's Ma'aser Rishon before Ezra, Ma'aser Rishon after Ezra. Ma'aser Rishon before Ezra, it's quite possible to say, was the exclusive purview of the Leviim. Ma'aser Rishon after Ezra, the Leviim are penalized. And therefore, again, we'll say, how are they penalized? Other people besides Leviim have access to Ma'aser Rishon. Who has access? One opinion, Leviim. Other opinion, one opinion, Aniyim, the poor. Other opinion, even Kohanim. So the Gemara says, Bishtan Laman Damar Knas Aniyim. So we'll say, I understand if you hold that that Ma'aser Rishon was really given to the poor. Now I understand the story. Rabbi say, this is why. Let's go back for just a moment. What don't we understand? Why did Rabbi Akiva prevent Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah from going into the garden and taking the Ma'aser Rishon? Elazar ben Azariah is a Kohen. Why did he prevent him from doing so? Oh, now I understand it. If you understand that the Knas of Ezra gave Ma'aser Rishon to the Aniyim, that's why Rabbi Akiva came along and prevented Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah from entering the garden. So the Gemara says, Mishum hachi ahadri Rabbi Akiva lepischa de kivri. I understand, because Rabbi Akiva felt that's really what? Really, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was not entitled to the Ma'aser Rishon. Ma'aser Rishon goes to Aniyim, not to Kohanim. Eleman da'amar l'Kohanim, amaya hadri lepischa le'bekavri. So I will say, but according to the one who says that the penalty of Ezra was that Ma'aser Rishon goes even to Kohanim, why did Rabbi Akiva reroute the entrance of the garden through the cemetery? According to that, again, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah should have been entitled to go ahead and take the Ma'aser Rishon. Haki Kamal, is what he said to him. So I'll say this. Interestingly enough, it's not clear. Haki Kamal means this is what Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Then I will say the drama of the story, as it was told before, is in the fact that what? There wasn't a conversation. So whether this means this is what Rabbi Akiva meant to convey to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, or maybe there was an actual conversation. It just wasn't recorded before. Sachi Kamarle. This is what Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. If you're coming to collect the Ma'aser Rishon because of the penalty, then fine. Rabbi Abba say, so Rabbi Akiva was saying to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, I just want to say why you're coming. If you're coming because of the penalty, and therefore again you feel as a Kohen, and maybe you're tamei, you're not permitted to go, you're permitted to eat this, right? And therefore again, it's been assigned to you, fine. But if you're coming to collect this because you think that you have the rights in this, I just want to be clear, you don't have rights. You don't have rights. So that appears to be what Rabbi Akiva was concerned about. Are you coming als knas, or are you coming als rights? If you think that you have a right of disbursement, a chalukah, that you do not have. But if you're coming als knas penalty, then that you do have. And again, so where's the conversation? So again, it doesn't appear that there was an actual conversation. But Allah said, this is what Rabbi Akiva was troubled by. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll end this last sugya. So we'll end this last piece. This last piece is, from where do we see ultimately again that the Leviim did not ascend? That last piece of history, Mir Hashem, tomorrow, Bosai. Shkoyach.